Previously, on the Fan of History, Tiglath-pileser III, the greatest king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, has been enlarging the empire ever since he took the throne in 745 BC. So, Tiglath-pileser III is the king of Assyria in 730 BC. Just 15 years ago, the empire was almost gone. I did a full episode on that, the empire at its deathbed. But he recovered everything. He conquered many places, he won many wars, and he still intends to keep conquering. The 720s are so filled with things to talk about. And this is the decade with the most content so far, so I'm going to split the show in 3 parts. This part will be about Babylon and Tiglath-pileser III. Part 2 will be about the Nubian invasion. Part 3 will be about the lost tribes of Israel. And I need your feedback on this. Are you okay with me doing like 4, maybe 5 episodes even on certain decades? Because the 720s are nothing compared to some decades coming up. We need to increase the money in the Patreon in order to go into the 7th century BC. But not by much. So if you want to help out, go to patreon.com/fanofhistory. And we'll get there. I will do the episodes down to 701 BC, the destruction of Sennacherib, in any case, because we already hit that Patreon goal. In 730 BC, Phoenicia are vassals of Assyria. Hiram II of Tyre is the leading king in Phoenicia, and he has become a vassal of Tiglath-pileser III in 730 BC. The Phoenicians only have one ally to turn to now, when the Assyrians are this powerful. And that ally is the Mediterranean Sea. So en masse they took to the sea. It's not known how many Phoenicians left Phoenicia at this point, but many of them did. And where did they go? Well, Tyre has a wonderful new colony that is far, far away from the reach of the Assyrian Empire. And the name of that colony is Carthage. So this event, the rise in Assyrian power, is the very reason why Carthage becomes such a powerful city. Because the old cities of Phoenicia, they fall under Assyrian influence. And this is a momentous event because they survived the Bronze Age collapse, the Phoenician cities in Lebanon. And they have spent 450 or more years without an overlord, ever since the Hittite Empire and the New Kingdom disappeared. They have not been ruled by anyone, but now they're ruled by Tiglath-pileser III. And Tyre especially is not very happy about this. And in 729, Tyre gets a new king, Luli, also known as Elulaios. Matan II died, having ruled only 1 year after his father Hiram II. And this might have been a rebellion. This looks like a rebellion to me. And Luli begins looking around. Who could possibly help him free Tyre from the Assyrians? But the Assyrians are powerful, and most of the states nearby are already under Assyrian domination. In 729 BC, Tiglath-pileser III decides to solve the Babylonian situation because a usurper is on the throne of Babylon. It's Mukin-zeri, and he's a Chaldean. He's the king in Babylon. And Tiglath-pileser III had defended the rightful king before, who'd been usurped, and now it has happened again. As we talked about earlier, he tried diplomacy to solve this situation because the cities in Babylonia are mostly pro-Assyrian, or they like the Assyrians a little bit at least. But now it's time to go full out Assyrian on Babylonia. I wanted to go through the situation in Babylonia before we get in there with TP3, because it's, as always, complicated. There is a native population, a Sumerian population related to the Assyrian population in Assyria. And these are the city dwellers, the people in the big cities in Babylonia, and they are reluctantly non-hostile to Assyria. Then there are the Chaldeans. There are 3 major tribes and several smaller tribes, and they are down on the south of this map. In the sea land, the great marches by the Indian Ocean. And they are very hostile to the Assyrians and very hated by the Assyrians. So they are the main opponent of the Assyrians. There are also the Kassites, the old ruling tribesmen, but they have retreated to their own land, the little nation of Namri. It's to the immediate north of Elam here on the map, in the foothills of the Zagros mountains, and they have fought many wars with the Assyrians already, and we talked about all of them. There is, as always, the Arameans, the orcs of ancient time. They are still around, they're living in the countryside, they're causing chaos. They do still have the best language, and their language is getting traction. People are switching to their language because it's so easy to learn, and it will soon be very, very easy to write. And the Arameans do not like the Assyrians, except a couple of tribes that are like, we are chaotic, we will do differently than any other Aramean, we will like the Assyrians. And then there is the ancient kingdom of Elam to the east on the map. They are always with the tribesmen, they are always against Assyria. But the main conflict is between Mukin-zeri, the Chaldean, and the Assyrians. So, here comes Tiglath-pileser III invading Babylonia. And the cities of Dilbat and Nippur immediately declare that they are on the side of the Assyrians. Mukin-zeri abandons Babylon itself because it is quite exposed. It is a great walled city, but it is close to Assyria. So he flees to the sea land. The big cities fall quickly, and a lot of the native Sumerians yield to the might of TP3. But the Chaldeans fail to maintain a unified front, and they engage in petty intrigues. Tiglath-pileser goes to the sea land, and he fights the different Chaldean tribes, such as the Bit-Yakin and the Bit-Yaili. Sakiru of the Bit-Yaili is overthrown, and its capital Dur-ilayatu is demolished. And this Chaldean king is hauled off to Assyria in chains. There is a guy called Merodach-Baladan, and please remember Merodach-Baladan. He's the leader of the Bit-Yakin tribe, and he submits. And he's given the title King of the Sea Land by the Assyrians. So he's like, oh great Assyrians, I never wanted to fight you. It was that evil king that forced me. And he sort of survives this quite well. Okay, let's go on here. We find Nabu-Uzabzi of the Bitsilani tribe, and TP3 wins against this guy and then impales him. Mukin-zeri is confined in his capital, Shabia. And Mukin-zeri is a very violent man, and immediately when the Assyrians are not around, and if somebody yields to the Assyrians, he attacks and kills them and mutilates them. So his policy is to make everyone more scared of him than the Assyrians. And that kind of works. TP3 has a hard time getting people to sign up with the Assyrians. But in a pretty funny incident, while Mukin-zeri is fighting in a place called Buharu against pro-Assyrian people, his own subjects rustles his sheep, and he loses a lot of sheep. There are two accounts of how this battle in the sea land ends. The Babylonian Chronicle reports the Assyrian king having come down to Akkad, ravaged Bit-Amukanu, and captured Mukin-zeri. And as you know, if somebody is captured by the Assyrians and you are not told what happens to them, they never appear again. And I still don't know what happens to all those people they capture. Because if they torture them, I thought they would tell us, because they love telling us about torturing people. There is also a letter to Tiglath-pileser III that states that Mukin-zeri has been killed and Suma-Ukin, his son, has also been killed. The city is conquered. Either way, the Assyrians won. So once again we have conquered Babylonia from Assyria. What to do with Babylonia? Because the Assyrians have this enormous respect for Babylonia. Unlike any other nation, they think the Babylonians are cool and worthy of respect. They consider the Babylonians a brother people. They respect the Babylonian gods, culture and science. And this very attitude to Babylonia will bring about the doom of Assyria. But that is yet to come. They had tried many different methods to handle Babylonia. Ashurnasirpal II and Shalmaneser III, they were great allies of Babylonia, and that worked. There has been war, Babylonia has been a vassal, but nothing has really worked in the long run. So Tiglath-pileser III has to find a new solution. And there has to be a new king on the throne. And he has a son, Shalmaneser V. And he's probably a great guy, because he's the son. I am sure Tiglath-pileser III had many sons, but he's the son chosen to rule by his father. But in the end, there is only one man that Tiglath-pileser III can trust with this very important job of being the king of Babylon. Himself! In an unprecedented move, Tiglath-pileser III crowns himself as the king of Babylon. And the native Sumerian population of Babylonia, they are really happy with this. That's what they wanted. They wanted a Sumerian king in Babylon, and now they have it. He takes the name King Pulu, because Pulu is his real name, as we have talked about before. And Shalmaneser now becomes the crown prince of both Assyria and Babylonia. And Shalmaneser is probably known as Ululayu in Babylonia, because that's his true name. Babylonia is still independent and not ruled by the Assyrians, but they are ruled by Tiglath-pileser III. So now this has two sides, because now Tiglath-pileser III has to do the job of the Babylonian king, including, for example, escorting the statue of the god Marduk in the New Year's procession at Babylon. And he has to actually be in Babylon a lot of the time. And that will be a strain on him and any future Assyrian king that follows in his footsteps. Because this involves work, and the Assyrian king has already a lot to do. After the victory, numerous Chaldeans are deported to other ends of the Assyrian Empire, where they will help to protect the borders. Syria, for example, is a good place to deport Chaldeans. There are no marches there for them to hide in. So that happens. For the next year, 728 BC, we really don't know much. We know this. So the king took the hand of Bul, and the city of He was captured. That's it for 728 BC. But in 727 BC, we know a lot more. Shalmaneser V ascended the throne, and that means Tiglath-pileser III died in 727 BC. And as is the custom, we don't know what happened. They never tell us. They will tell us soon, actually, about the king that died, but not yet. So, when Tiglath-pileser III took the throne in 745 BC, the empire was almost gone, and now the empire is bigger than it has ever been, ever. For more than 1,000 years, the empire has never been this big. And he took the best army in the world, he made it much better. A lot of things that are Persian and Roman comes not only really from the Assyrians, but from this very king. We talked a lot about that in earlier episodes. So go back to the episodes where he takes power and look at all the reforms he made and see how well they fit in with the Roman army, for example, and the Persian army of Xerxes. So TP3 influenced world history more than any other Assyrian, save perhaps Ashurbanipal. Oh, I can't wait to start telling you about Ashurbanipal. But then you have to support this on Patreon so we can get to the 7th century BC. Because Ashurbanipal is still a bit in the future. I need to talk a little bit about Tiglath-pileser's building projects. I have no idea how he had time for all of this. He campaigned all these years, he won all these wars, but he also managed to build some stuff. He built a new palace at Kala, because Ashurnasirpal's old palace wasn't good enough for him. And the first excavator of Kala, Layard, called this the Central Palace. It stands on a platform of limestone blocks raised from the Tigris River itself. It has woods from all over the empire and lots of precious metals. It's still heavily influenced by the Neo-Hittite style, just like Ashurnasirpal. They have made it the Assyrian style. There are great depictions of his deeds on stone slabs that line the walls, but they are not as well preserved as Ashurnasirpal II's reliefs, and that's why Ashurnasirpal II has his own rooms in the British Museum, while Tiglath-pileser do not, as far as I know. That's because a future king, Esarhaddon, looted the palace of Tiglath to build his own palace, the southwest palace at Kala. But Esarhaddon never even finished the project. Ooh, boo, Esarhaddon. TP3 also did some work on the temple of Nabu in Kala, the Asharia itself, the temple of the war god in Ashur, and on the Adad temple in Ashur. He built the palace at a place called Ashur-Ikisha, and he constructed something at pretty close to Carchemish. But now he's gone. Farewell, Tiglath-pileser III. You should be remembered along with Julius Caesar and Napoleon as one of the great generals in history. Thinking about that, you should probably have told us how you won all these battles, and then we would think you were one of the greatest generals in history. So now his son, Shalmaneser V, becomes the king of Assyria. There is no Assyrian depiction of Shalmaneser V, and that's probably a bad sign. And this illustration of him comes from the Old Testament. And I can't trust this picture, because no Assyrian king would go out looking like this. Have you noticed that all the Assyrian kings kind of look like each other? And they would definitely not look like that. But he's in 2 Kings 17 to 18. It is possible Shalmaneser V was already responsible for administration of Assyria and the empire while the king was away in fighting wars. And that Shalmaneser ran the court in Kala. And that would later be the traditional task of the crown prince. There are preserved letters actually from an Ululayu to Tiglath-pileser III, telling him of administration matters in the capital. I've also heard that Shalmaneser was actually in Phoenicia and was like the governor of Phoenicia when he was the crown prince. We know very little about this king. We know that he becomes the king of Babylonia as Ululayu. His rise to power is not contested. And it's very strange that we don't have sources, because we have so many sources for Tiglath-pileser and we have so many sources for the next king after Shalmaneser. So it's almost as if someone has erased the sources. And I have a suspect in mind. We will meet him in the 3rd episode of the 720s BC. And the Epinome Chronicle is actually damaged, so all we know is that Shalmaneser V goes on 3 campaigns against something. We know that he stayed in the land in 722 BC, and that was probably just to get in the hang of things of being the king. But it's kind of a bad sign, because most Assyrian kings just go on a crazy campaign in their first year. And we'll talk a lot more about Shalmaneser V, because he is responsible actually for a major event that still has a big effect on history. So more to come about this king. Do you remember these guys? Urartu in what is today Armenia. They have a king called Rusa. Tiglath-pileser III beat him up really hard in the last decade. And he has spent his time trying to stabilize his kingdom. He has built more fortresses to keep the Assyrians out. He must have really feared an Assyrian invasion by TP3, but TP3 never had the time to go into Urartu itself. I think Rusa and the people of Urartu blamed their misfortunes on their god. So there's a religious change. Chaldean, the war god, who is a blatant copy of Ashur, the god of the Assyrians, he doesn't put a demand on the Urartians that they have to go to war every year anymore. And Tesheba, the Hurrian god of war and storm, is raised to an importance almost as great as Chaldean. And the Urartian thinks that their neglect of Tesheba, which has been going on forever, like over 100 years, was the reason for Urartu's misfortunes. They build a new and powerful fortress at Lake Sevan, that's up in the north. And you might wonder, why do they build such a new and powerful fortress in the north if the Assyrians are in the south? This fortress is called the city of Teisheba, but then they get like second thoughts, and what if Chaldea gets mad? So we build the city of Chaldea as well nearby, so that the gods would not become jealous of each other, because that would be horrible. And then Rusa looks at Musasir. Musasir is a semi-independent kingdom at this time. The ruler Musasir once switched allegiance to Assyria. It's to the far south on this map, and it's really important that Musasir remains in the hands of the Urartians, because if Assyria has Musasir, it's much easier to invade Urartu itself. Ursana, who has fled to Rusa, the king of Urartu, was reinstalled as the ruler of the frontier kingdom in his royal city of Ardini. And this was to form a powerful bastion against Assyria. And to ensure that Ursana remained loyal to Urartu, there was also an Urartian governor installed in Ardini. And this alliance was recorded on a stele, and they wrote on the stele both in Assyrian and Urartian cuneiform, so the Assyrians would know if they see it that Musasir is not on the side of the Assyrians. But the Assyrian attack doesn't come. TP3 is busy somewhere else, so the Urartians just keep doing what they're good at. That is extorting money from smaller kingdoms in close to their land, and mining and brewing wine and having a great time. They become really rich because the Assyrians don't come. But in the north, a new power is about to awaken, and Urartu will soon be in really bad... They will be in a really bad position because of things they don't really know about yet. In 725 BC, there is the Lelantine War, which changes Greece forever. And, well, I'm already 22 minutes in here, so... yeah, I'll have to make a fourth part of the 720s BC. This is an uncertain date, but 725 BC seems like a pretty good date for it. And we'll talk about that in part 4 of the events of the 720s BC. Next time, we will have an all-Egyptian episode. We'll go to Egypt in the 720s BC, and you will see this guy who will come from Nubia and try to unify all of Egypt again. It has been a while since Egypt was unified, and Egypt is actually very, very fragmented in small kingdoms. And in the episode after that, we will look at the major deed, the horrible deed of Shalmaneser V. Well, check out our podcast on iTunes. We are 2 people doing the podcast. It's quite different from this. You can check us out on Facebook. Many of you have done so. That's our most popular platform, actually. We're on Twitter. We have a WordPress site. Subscribe, like, and share. That helps. And I really want you to support us on Patreon. You can contribute $1 an episode. You can contribute 25 cents per episode. But we are trying to get to $30 per episode. So if you feel that in your heart you can contribute 25 cents, please go to patreon.com/fanofhistory. Because if we get to $30, we will go on beyond 701 BC with this YouTube show. So please help us out with that. And thank you for watching.